Amara, a 14-year-old girl from the small town of Akur, found herself in a difficult situation. Despite repeated warnings from her parents, she had been secretly meeting her boyfriend. Her father's words often echoed in her mind. "You're too young to have a boyfriend. Focus on being useful to yourself and leave boys alone for now." But Amara, driven by curiosity and what she thought was love, continued to disobey. She would sneak out whenever she could, making excuses about studying at a friend's house or running errands. One day, after feeling unwell for weeks, Amara's world turned upside down. She realized she was pregnant. Her heart raced as she approached her boyfriend with the news. I think I'm pregnant," she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. Her boyfriend's face drained of color. "What? No, that's impossible. It can't be mine," he said, stepping back. Amara felt her world crumble. But you're the only one I've been with," she pleaded. "I don't care. I'm not ready for this. Don't tell anyone it's mine," he said coldly, before walking away, leaving her alone and terrified. For weeks, Amara struggled to keep her secret. She wore loose clothes and tried to act normal, but the fear of discovery consumed her. Every morning, she woke up dreading the moment her parents would find out. One night, as she lay in bed, she overheard her parents talking in the living room. I'm worried about Amara," her mother said. "She's been acting strangely." "Maybe she's finally taking her studies seriously," her father replied. "It's about time she listened to us about focusing on her future." Amara felt a pang of guilt. Her parents had high hopes for her, and now she had let them down in the worst way possible. The fear of disappointing them, coupled with the terror of becoming a mother at such a young age, overwhelmed her. She imagined the shame she would bring to her family, the possibility of being kicked out, and the beating she might receive. "What am I going to do?" she whispered, tears streaming down her face. For days, Amara wrestled with her options. She considered telling her parents, hoping they might understand, but every time she tried to bring it up, her courage failed her. One afternoon, as she walked home from school, she passed the bus station. She stopped, staring at the buses lined up, ready to take people to far-off places. An idea began to form in her mind. That night, Amara lay awake, her mind racing. "I can't stay here," she thought. "I can't face them. I can't face anyone." The next morning, after her parents left for work, Amara made her decision. With shaking hands, she packed a small bag with clothes and the little money she had saved. Standing in her room one last time, she looked around at the familiar surroundings. Her school books on the desk, photos of her friends on the wall, the teddy bear she'd had since childhood. Everything reminded her of the life she was about to leave behind. She scribbled a quick note. "I'm sorry. I love you. Please don't look for me." Amara left the note on her bed, hoping it would buy her some time before her parents started searching for her. With a heavy heart, she slipped out of the house. As she walked toward the bus station, every step felt like lead. She kept looking over her shoulder, afraid someone might recognize her and stop her. At the ticket counter, her voice trembled. "Oh, ticket please to wherever the next bus is going," she said. The attendant looked at her curiously, but didn't ask any questions. "Next bus is to Lagos, leaves in 10 minutes. Amara nodded, handing over most of her money for the ticket. As she waited, she thought about her parents coming home to find her gone. Their worry, their anger, their disappointment. But in her mind, this was the only way. When the bus pulled up, Amara took one last look at the town she had called home for 14 years. Tears welled up in her eyes as she boarded, knowing she was leaving behind everything and everyone she knew. As the bus lurched forward, a curve faded into the distance. Amara placed a hand on her stomach, feeling the weight of her decision and the uncertainty of her future. "I'm sorry," she whispered, to her parents, her unborn child, and herself. After several hours, the bus finally arrived in Lagos. Amara stepped off, her legs wobbly from the journey. The bustling park overwhelmed her. The noise, the crowds, the towering buildings. It was nothing like her small town. "Where am I supposed to go now?" Amara muttered, clutching her small bag tightly. She had spent her last naira on the bus ticket. Now she stood in a strange city, alone and unsure of what to do next. The reality of her situation began to sink in. Amara was alone, pregnant, and lost in a city she knew nothing about. As the sun began to set, she wandered the crowded streets of Lagos, her stomach growling with hunger, a constant reminder that she hadn't eaten all day. She passed by food vendors, the aroma of roasted meat and freshly fried snacks making her mouth water, but she had no money to buy anything. "Excuse me," she asked a passerby, her voice hesitant. "Do you know where I can find a cheap place to stay?" The person barely glanced at her before hurrying away, leaving Amara feeling even more invisible and alone. As darkness fell, her fear grew. And the city streets became more intimidating, shadows stretching long and unfamiliar sounds echoing in the night. She kept walking, her feet aching, hoping to find somewhere, anywhere, safe to rest. In a quieter part of the city, Amara spotted an elderly woman locking up what seemed to be a small shop. Desperation gave her courage, and she approached the woman. "Good evening, Ma," she began, her voice trembling. "Please, I'm new here and I'm lost. I can't find my way. Could you let me sleep at your house until tomorrow? Please help me." The elderly woman looked at her with a mix of surprise and suspicion. What do you mean you're lost? What are you doing on the streets at this time of night? Where are your parents?" she asked sharply, her voice laced with concern and a hint of accusation. Feeling cornered, Amara decided to tell the truth. I ran away from home," she admitted, her eyes welling with tears. "I'm pregnant, and I was scared to tell my parents. I have nowhere to go." The woman's expression shifted from surprise to disappointment. "Pregnant? At your age? You must be a stubborn girl to get yourself into this kind of trouble," she said, shaking her head. "Now, go away. I can't help you." Amara felt her heart sink. She had hoped the woman might take pity on her, but instead she found herself rejected once again. Tears streaming down her face, she walked away, feeling more alone than ever. As exhaustion began to take over, she stumbled upon a large tree in a quiet area and sat down, leaning against its trunk. Her eyelids grew heavy, and she was just beginning to drift off when the sound of footsteps startled her. Her eyes snapped open. A group of young men was walking toward her, their loud voices and aggressive laughter making her heart race. Panic set in. Without thinking, she jumped to her feet and began to run. "Hey, where are you going?" one of the boys shouted after her. To her horror, she heard them begin to chase her. Amara's pregnant body protested as she pushed herself to run faster. Her breath came in short gasps as she darted down unfamiliar streets, silently praying, "Please, God, help me." After what felt like hours, but was only a few minutes, she could no longer hear the boys behind her. Slowing down, her lungs burned and her legs shook with exhaustion, she found herself in a quiet, partially developed area of the city. Catching her breath, Amara's thoughts turned to her family back in Akur. She imagined her mother finding her empty room and reading the note she had left behind. She could almost hear her father's angry voice and her mother's sobs. The guilt and homesickness were unbearable. "I'm sorry, Mama. I'm sorry, Papa," she whispered into the night, tears streaming down her face. As she continued walking, Amara spotted an unfinished building in the distance. It was just a concrete shell, no windows, no doors, but it offered shelter from the elements and the prying eyes of the streets. Cautiously, she approached the structure. "Hello?" she called out softly, her voice barely audible. When no one responded, she stepped inside. The floor was hard and dusty, but to Amara's exhausted body, it felt like a safe haven. She found a corner partially hidden from the entrance and settled down, using her small bag as a makeshift pillow. Placing a hand on her stomach, she whispered to her unborn child, "I'm sorry, little one. I don't know what we're going to do, but I promise I'll figure something out." The night was long and uncomfortable. Every sound made her jump, fearing someone had found her hiding place. But as the first light of dawn filtered into the building, she realized she had survived her first night in Lagos. Sitting up, she stretched her sore muscles and looked around her makeshift shelter. It wasn't much, but for now, it was all she had. "I guess this is home now," she said softly, her voice a mixture of resignation and determination. As the city outside began to wake, Amara steeled herself for the challenges ahead. She had no money, no food, and no plan. But she was alive, and for now, that had to be enough. With a deep breath, she stepped out of the building, ready to face her first full day in this strange, overwhelming city. Amara's pregnancy progressed rapidly, and life in Lagos was unimaginably hard for her. Each day was a battle to find food, to stay safe, and to simply survive. Hunger gnawed at her constantly, forcing her to approach strangers on the streets with pleading eyes. "Please, can you spare some food?" she would ask passers-by. Some ignored her, while others gave her small portions of food or a few naira. To earn a little money, Amara started washing clothes for people in the neighborhood. "I can wash your clothes for you," she offered to women she saw in the area. "I'll do a good job, I promise." One woman, Mrs. Adabo, became a regular client. "You're a hard worker, Amara," she'd say, handing over a small payment, "but you shouldn't be doing this in your condition." Amara would nod, grateful for the work despite her exhaustion. "Thank you, Ma. I have no choice," she would reply. Months passed like this, with Amara barely scraping by. Then, one evening, as she sat in her makeshift shelter in the unfinished building, she felt a sharp pain rip through her body. "Oh no," she gasped, clutching her stomach. She realized what was happening. "Not now, please not now," she begged, but the baby was coming, and she was all alone. Pain engulfed her as she screamed, her cries echoing through the empty structure. "Help! Somebody help me!" she yelled, but no one was around to hear her. For hours, Amara pushed and cried, the agony unlike anything she had ever experienced. "I can't do this," she sobbed. But her body had other plans. It kept working, forcing her to bring her child into the world. Finally, with one last excruciating push, her baby was born. Exhausted and in shock, Amara stared at the tiny, crying infant in her trembling hands. "Hello, little one," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. Using the cleanest cloth she had, Amara cleaned the baby as best she could. As she held him, boy, she felt an overwhelming mix of love and despair. She knew she couldn't provide for him. She had no money, no home, and no way to keep him healthy or safe. "What am I going to do with you?" she asked softly, her voice breaking. The baby quieted, gazing up at her with unfocused eyes. "I want to keep you, but I can't. I'm so sorry," she whispered, her heart shattering. Amara spent the night holding her son, trying to feed him and keep him warm. But as the sun rose, she knew what she had to do. She couldn't keep the baby with her. It would mean death for both of them. An idea began to form, one that broke her heart but seemed to be the only chance for her son's survival. "I have to be strong," she told herself, looking down at the baby. "For you, my little one, for you." Tears streaming down her cheeks, she spoke softly to him. "My sweet baby," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Please forgive me for what I'm about to do. I know you won't understand, but this is the only way I can give you a chance at a better life. I want you to know that I love you so much." The baby cooed softly, unaware of his mother's anguish. Amara hugged him tightly, memorizing every detail of his tiny face. With shaking hands, she wrapped him in the cleanest cloth she had and kissed his forehead. "It's time," she murmured, more to herself than to him. Amara stepped out of her shelter, cradling her son close. She walked to a nearby street where she knew a wealthy family lived. Their large house stood out among the others, a symbol of prosperity she could only dream of. As she approached the mansion's gate, doubt crept into her mind. What if this doesn't work? What if they don't find him? She wondered. But she knew she had to try. This was her son's only chance at a good life. With a final kiss on his forehead, Amara gently placed him near the gate. She carefully arranged the cloth to ensure he was visible and comfortable. "Be safe, my love," she whispered, her voice breaking. Quickly, she moved away, hiding behind a nearby tree. From her hiding spot, she watched the gate intently. Minutes passed, each one feeling like an eternity. Finally, the gate opened. Amara held her breath as a well-dressed couple stepped outside. It was the billionaire and his wife. "What's this?" the man asked, bending down to inspect the bundle. His wife gasped, It's a baby. Oh my goodness, how did it get here?" The couple looked around, searching for any sign of who might have left the child. Amara pressed herself against the tree, her heart pounding. "We can't leave him out here," the woman said, carefully picking up the baby. "Let's take him inside and figure out what to do." The couple retreated into their house, carrying Amara's son with them. Watching them go, Amara felt a mix of relief and heartbreak. Sliding down the tree trunk, she sobbed quietly. "Be good to him," she pleaded silently to the couple. "Give him the life I can't." With a heavy heart, Amara stood up and walked away from the mansion. She didn't look back, knowing she had made the hardest but right decision for her baby. The walk back to her shelter was heavy with emotion. Amara whispered a final goodbye to her son, her voice trembling. "I hope you have a wonderful life, my dear. Maybe someday, somehow, we'll meet again." Inside their luxurious home, Mr. Mark and his wife Sarah gently carried the baby to their bedroom. They placed him on their large bed, both staring at the tiny bundle in disbelief. "What do we do now, Mark?" Sarah asked, her voice filled with a mix of concern and excitement. Who ran his hand through his hair, his expression bewildered. I'm not sure, we should probably call the police and report this," he suggested hesitantly. Sarah gently touched the baby's cheek, her eyes filling with tears. "But look at him, Mark. He's so small, so helpless." The couple exchanged a meaningful look. For years, they had been trying to have a child, spending fortunes on fertility treatments, all in vain. The pain of their inability to conceive had cast a shadow over their otherwise successful lives. Mark sat heavily on the edge of the bed, his head in his hands. "You know, Sarah," he said slowly, "maybe this isn't a coincidence. We've prayed for a child for so long." Sarah's eyes lit up with hope. "Do you think, could this be our miracle?" Mark reached for his wife's hand and held it tightly. "Maybe it is. Maybe this is the gift we've been waiting for all these years." They both looked down at the baby, who was now sleeping peacefully, blissfully unaware of the life-changing decision being made around him. "We could give him a wonderful life," Sarah said softly, her voice thick with emotion. "Everything we've always wanted to give to our child." Mark nodded, a smile spreading across his face. "You're right. We'll keep the baby. This is our chance to be parents." Tears of joy streamed down Sarah's face as she carefully picked up the baby. "Hello, little one," she whispered. "We're your new mom and dad." Mark wrapped his arms around his wife and the baby, his voice warm with love. "We need to give him a name. What do you think?" Sarah thought for a moment, then smiled. "How about Alex? It means defender or product taked." "Alex," Mark repeated, testing the name. "I like it. Welcome to the family, Alex." As the reality of their sudden parenthood sank in, Mark's practical side emerged. "You know, Sarah, with our busy schedules, we might need help. Maybe we should hire a nanny to watch over Alex while we're at work." Sarah nodded. "That's a good idea. We want to give Alex all the care and attention he needs." "I'll start looking for someone right away," Mark said. "We will find the perfect person to help take care of our son." The couple marveled at their unexpected blessing, completely unaware of the true story behind Alex's arrival, or the challenges that lay ahead in their new journey as parents. Meanwhile, Amara couldn't escape the guilt and worry over her decision. She spent her days and nights wandering near the mansion, her mind filled with questions and doubts. "Did I make the right choice?" she muttered to herself, staring at the grand gates. "Is my baby okay in there?" One evening, as she paced near the property, a security guard approached her. "Miss, are you lost? You've been here for hours," he said, eyeing her suspiciously. Amara jumped, startled. "No, I'm just walking," she stammered. "This isn't a public park. You can't stay here," the guard said firmly. Amara nodded and walked away, her heart heavy. She found a nearby bench and sat down, tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry, my baby," she whispered to the night. "I hope you're happy in there." Sleep became a luxury for Amara. Every night she tossed and turned in her makeshift shelter, her mind racing with thoughts of her child. "Is he being cared for? Does he miss me?" she asked the darkness, receiving no answer. One day, as Amara walked her usual route near the mansion, something caught her eye. A notice was posted on the gate. "Annie's needed." Her heart raced as she read it. "This is it," she whispered to herself. "This could be my chance to see my baby again." but doubt quickly crept in. What if they recognize me? What if I can't handle being so close to him without telling the truth? She paced back and forth, weighing her options. Should I do this? Can I even pull it off? After hours of internal debate, Amara made her decision. I have to try, she said firmly. I need to know he's okay. The next day, Amara cleaned herself up as best she could and went to apply for the job. She rehearsed her story over and over on the way. At the gate, she greeted the woman who answered nervously. "Good morning, I'm here about the nanny position." To her surprise, she was ushered in immediately. Soon, she found herself sitting across from Mr. Mark and Sarah. "So, Amara, tell us about your experience with children," Mark asked, his tone polite but cautious. Amara took a deep breath. "I love children," she said, thinking of her baby. "I've helped raise my younger siblings and cousins." Mrs. Mark smiled. "That's wonderful. How do you handle difficult situations with children?" "With patience and understanding," Amara replied, her voice growing steadier. The interview continued, and to Amara's shock, Mr. Mark leaned forward, extending his hand to Amara. "Well, Amara, we'd like to offer you the position. Can you start tomorrow?" Amara nodded, barely able to speak. As she left the mansion, a mix of excitement and fear filled her. She was going to see her baby again, but at what cost? The next day, Amara began her job as a nanny in the billionaire household. Her heart raced every time she saw Alex, and she had to remind herself constantly not to show too much emotion. "Good morning, Alex," she'd say softly, fighting the overwhelming urge to scoop him up and never let go. Mrs. Mark quickly noticed Amara's gentle way with the baby. "You're so good with him, Amara," she said one day. "He really seems to like you." Amara smiled nervously. "Thank you, Ma." "He's a wonderful baby," she replied, her voice tinged with emotion. When the family was out, Amara allowed herself to embrace her secret moments with Alex. Holding him close, she'd whisper softly, "My sweet boy, I'm your mama. I wish I could tell you." She'd breastfeed him during these quiet times, cherishing the bond they shared. "This is our secret, okay?" she'd say, tears filling her eyes. As weeks passed, Alex began to show a strong preference for Amara. He cried when she left the room and calmed instantly in her arms. One evening, as they sat together in the living room, Mr. Mark remarked, "It's amazing how attached Alex is to you, Amara. You must have a special touch." Amara's heart pounded as she replied, "Oh, I just try my best, sir." Mrs. Mark added with a warm smile, "We're so lucky to have found you. Alex clearly loves you." Amara nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. While she was grateful for these moments with her son, the weight of her secret became harder to bear each day. That night, as she put Alex to bed, she whispered, "I love you so much, my little one, more than you'll ever know." One sunny afternoon, Sarah and Mr. Mark sat on their patio, enjoying the pleasant weather. They watched as Amara played with Alex on a blanket spread out on the lawn. Sarah frowned slightly. "Honey, I don't know. Have you noticed how attached that nanny is to Alex?" Mark nodded, his eyes focused on Amara and the baby. "I was just about to mention that. We hired her to care for Alex, but she seems almost too attached to him. It's unusual, don't you think?" They both watched as Amara tickled Alex, his loud giggles filling the air. "Look at how she looks at him," Mark continued. "It's almost like, "Oh, I don't know. Um, I hope everything's all right with her." Sarah sighed, her expression softening. "Maybe we're overthinking this," she said. "She could just be very dedicated. Some people are naturally good with children." Um, Mark nodded, though he still looked concerned. "That's true," he admitted, "but don't you find it odd how quickly Alex bonded with her? He cries whenever she's not around." Sarah patted her husband's hand. "I understand your concerns, but let's not worry too much. She's taking excellent care of Alex, and that's what matters most." Mark sighed, his expression softening. "You're right," he said finally. "As long as Alex is happy and well cared for, we shouldn't complain." From the garden, Amara noticed the couple glancing in her direction as they talked. Though she couldn't hear their words clearly, the frequent looks made her uneasy. Pretending to tidy Alex's toys, she moved closer, straining to catch snippets of their conversation. Sarah's voice floated toward her. "The nanny? She's so attached to Alex." Amara's heart raced. Bending down, she feigned tying her shoelace as she listened intently. Mark's response made her blood run cold, a bit too attached to the baby. Amara's hand shook as she placed a toy in the basket. Her mind spiraled with panic. "They're getting suspicious," she thought. "I need to watch my steps." Taking a deep breath, she forced a calm expression as she walked toward the house. "I can't lose this chance to be with my baby," she whispered to herself. "I have to be smarter about this." For 10 long years, Amara lived a double life in the billionaire's household. Each day was a delicate balance, caring for Alex while hiding her true identity. "Alex, have you finished your homework?" Amara would ask, her voice gentle but firm. "Almost done, Nanny Amara," the boy would reply, his face lighting up at her attention. Amara marveled at his progress as he grew. She witnessed his first steps, his first words, and his achievements in school. Each milestone filled her with pride and an ache she couldn't express. One evening, as she tucked 9-year-old Alex into bed, he looked up at her curiously. "Nanny Amara, why do you always look sad when you think I'm not watching?" Her heart skipped a beat. "Oh, Alex," she replied, forcing a smile. "I'm not sad. I'm just thinking, that's all." Alex leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Nanny, can I tell you a secret?" Amara's heart raced. "Of course, Alex. You can tell me anything." The boy smiled softly, his eyes full of innocence. "You're my favorite," he said. Amara felt a lump rise in her throat. "And you're mine," she whispered, brushing his hair gently. In that moment, the bittersweet reality of her life settled over her once again. Alex hugged Amara tightly, his small arms wrapped around her. "You're my favorite person in the whole world," he said earnestly. Amara fought back tears. Her voice soft as she replied, "Oh, Alex, you're very special to me too." Mr. Mark often boasted about Alex's achievements. "Did you see Alex's latest test scores?" he'd say to Sarah. "He's at the top of his class again. Such a smart boy." Sarah would beam with pride. "He's incredible," she'd agree. Amara would listen to these conversations, her heart swelling with pride but aching with the secret she carried. She'd think to herself, "That's my boy, my brilliant, beautiful boy." During quiet moments, Amara sometimes allowed herself to imagine a different life. What if I had kept him, she'd wonder. But then she'd look around at the luxurious home and the endless opportunities Alex had. She reminded herself why she had made her choice. "Nanny Amara, can you help me with this math problem?" Alex's voice would call, snapping her out of her thoughts. "Of course, Alex," she'd respond, grateful for another chance to be close to her son. "Let's figure it out together." One afternoon, 9-year-old Alex was playing in the sitting room, zooming his toy airplane through the air. As he ran past the ornate glass table, his elbow caught the edge of a delicate glass ornament. It toppled over and shattered on the marble floor with a loud crash. Alex froze, his eyes wide with fear. "Oh no," he whispered, staring at the shards of glass scattered across the floor. The sound echoed through the house. Within seconds, Sarah rushed into the room, her eyes darting from the broken glass to Alex. "What? What happened?" she exclaimed, her face reddening with anger. "Alex, you broke the glass on the table. I've told you so many times not to play near it." Before Alex could explain or apologize, Sarah grabbed him by the arm and began spanking him. "How many times do I have to tell you?" she scolded. "That glass was expensive." Amara, who had been in the kitchen, rushed into the room when she heard the commotion. Her heart broke as she watched Sarah punishing Alex. It took every ounce of self-control not to intervene. She clenched her fists, fighting the overwhelming urge to protect her son. When Sarah finally let go, Alex ran to his room, sobbing, while Sarah stormed off to her own room without a word to Amara. A few minutes later, Amara quietly knocked on Alex's door. "Alex, can I come in?" A muffled yes came from inside. Amara entered to find Alex curled up on his bed, his face streaked with tears. Sitting down beside him, she gently stroked his back. "I know you're sad now, Alex," she said softly. "What happened was an accident. Next time if you want to play, come outside with me, okay? I'm always here for you." Alex looked up at her, his eyes red and puffy. "I didn't mean to break it," he sniffled. "I was just playing." "I know, sweetheart," Amara soothed. "Accidents happen." Alex sat up and threw his arms around her. "I just wish you were my mother," he cried. "I love you so much." Amara felt her heart shatter. Tears welled up in her eyes as she hugged Alex tightly. "If only you knew the truth," she thought. Alex noticed her tears and pulled back slightly. "Please stop crying, Nanny Amara," he said, his voice trembling. "Did I say something wrong?" Amara quickly wiped her eyes. "No, no, Alex," she assured him. "You didn't say anything wrong." I wish my mom was like you," Alex admitted, his voice breaking. Amara forced a gentle smile. "Everyone shows love differently, Alex," she said softly. "Your mother loved you in her own way." Alex frowned but nodded slowly. After comforting Alex, Amara left his room. As she closed the door behind her, she heard him whisper, "I wish my mother was just like my nanny." Leaning against the wall outside Alex's room, Amara fought back the overwhelming tide of emotion. The irony of the situation wasn't lost on her. She was Alex's real mother, yet she couldn't tell him. Instead, she had to watch another woman raise her son, sometimes in ways she didn't agree with, and there was nothing she could do about it. "Oh, Alex," she whispered to herself, "if only you knew how much I love you." Later that night, Amara retreated to her small room in the servants' quarters. As soon as she closed the door, the tears came. She sank onto her bed, her body trembling with quiet sobs. "My baby," she cried softly. "Oh, Alex, if only you knew." Her mind raced with Alex's words. I wish she were my mother. The irony was too much to bear. I am your mother, she whispered to the empty room. I've always been your mother. As her tears subsided, a dangerous thought began to form in her mind. Maybe I should tell him the truth, she muttered to herself. Maybe we could leave this place together. But fear quickly set in. No, it's too risky, she argued with herself. What if they don't believe me? What if they take Alex away from me forever? Amara paced the small room, torn between her desire to claim her son and the harsh reality of their situation. There has to be a way, she said to herself. I just need to find it. Amara watched Alex closely, sensing that something was wrong. His once bright smile was now overshadowed by a growing sadness. One afternoon, as she passed by his room, she found him staring blankly out the window instead of doing his homework. Alex, sweetie, she called gently, stepping inside. Aren't you supposed to be studying? Alex let out a weary sigh. What's the point? Mom and Dad are never around to see my grades anyway. Amara's heart ached at his words. She sat down beside him, her voice soft but firm. They're just busy with work, Alex. They care about you, even if it doesn't feel that way sometimes. But you're always here, Alex replied, turning to her with sad, searching eyes. Why can't they be more like you? Amara swallowed hard, fighting back tears. Everyone has different responsibilities, Alex. Your parents love you very much. Alex turned back to the window, but the weight of his words lingered in the room. Oh, my sweet boy, Amara thought. If only I could tell you the whole truth. Days later, Alex's life took a darker turn. The boy who had once been the pride of his school for his intelligence and achievements was now struggling. His grades plummeted dramatically, from first in his class to nearly the bottom. At home, the situation was just as dire. His father's booming voice echoed through the house one evening. What's wrong with you, Alex? How could you let your grades slip like this? He roared, waving Alex's report card in frustration. His mother's words cut even deeper. Are you trying to embarrass us? She scolded, her tone dripping with disappointment. You used to be so smart. What happened to our brilliant son? Neither of them paused to ask what was troubling their only child. They didn't notice how their words crushed him, how their expectations weighed heavily on his young shoulders. Their busy schedules left no room for understanding or compassion. At school, Alex's struggles didn't go unnoticed. His teachers, concerned, tried to help. Mrs. Johnson, his English teacher, stopped him after class. Alex, is everything all right? You seem very distracted lately, she asked with genuine concern. I'm fine, Alex mumbled, avoiding her gaze, but the pain in his voice was unmistakable. Mr. P, his math teacher, also reached out. Alex, your grades have dropped significantly. Is something bothering you? You can talk to me if you need help, he offered kindly. But Alex shut them out, shaking his head and walking away. He couldn't bring himself to open up, not even to those who cared. The only person Alex felt safe with was Amara. One evening, as she helped him with his homework, the walls he had built around his heart finally crumbled. Nanny Amara, he whispered, his voice quivering. I don't know what to do anymore. Nothing I do seems good enough for Mom and Dad. Amara's chest tightened as she saw the tears welling in his eyes. Oh, Alex, she said softly, wrapping an arm around his trembling shoulders. What makes you feel that way? The words poured out of Alex like a dam breaking. They're always yelling at me about my grades. They don't care about anything else. They don't even ask if I'm okay or what's wrong. It's like they only love me when I'm perfect." Tears burned at the corners of Amara's eyes, but she held them back. Hugging him close, she whispered, "Your parents love you very much, Alex. They just have a hard time showing it sometimes. But I'm here for you, always. You can tell me anything, okay?" Alex nodded, burying his face in her shoulder. In that moment, Amara's heart broke in two. She longed to tell him the truth, that she was his real mother and loved him more than life itself. But for now, all she could do was hold him and offer the comfort he so desperately needed. With Amara's unwavering support, Alex began to find his footing again, and he worked hard to rebuild his confidence, and slowly his efforts paid off. One afternoon, his teacher, Mrs. Okafor, called him aside after class. "Alex, can I speak with you for a moment?" she asked warmly. Alex nodded, a little nervous. "Yes, Mrs. Okafor. I've noticed a significant improvement in your performance lately," she said with a proud smile. "Your grades have shot up and you're contributing more in class discussions. I'm really impressed with the progress you've made." Alex's face lit up with pride. "Thank you, Mrs. Okafor. I've been trying harder." "And it shows," she continued. "In fact, I've spoken to the school principal about you. We'd like you to represent our school in the upcoming national competition. It's a prestigious event with over 2,000 schools from across Nigeria competing." Alex's eyes widened in disbelief. "Really? Me?" Mrs. Okafor nodded, her smile widening. "Yes, Alex, we believe in your potential." The moment of recognition. Alex stood frozen in his classroom, his heart pounding in disbelief. Mrs. Okafor, his English teacher, smiled warmly at him. "We would like you to represent our school in the upcoming national competition," she announced, her voice brimming with pride. "It's a contest between 2,000 schools across Nigeria." Alex's eyes widened with surprise and excitement. "Really? Me?" he asked, barely able to believe his ears. Mrs. Okafor nodded. "Yes, Alex, you've worked hard, and we believe you have the potential to do very well." A grin spread across Alex's face as his excitement bubbled over. "Thank you so much, Mrs. Okafor. I promise I'll do my best. I want to put our school on the map, not just in Nigeria, but in all of Africa." Mrs. Okafor's face lit up at his enthusiasm. "That's the spirit, Alex. Your dedication and growth are truly impressive. Keep it up, and I'm sure you'll make us all proud." As Alex left the classroom, his heart felt lighter than it had in weeks. He couldn't wait to share the news. Running home, he burst into the kitchen where Amara was preparing dinner. "Nanning Amara! Nanning Amara!" he called out, his voice filled with excitement. Amara turned to him, smiling at his energy. "What is it, Alex? What's got you so excited?" "You won't believe it," Alex exclaimed. "Mrs. Okafor said I'm going to represent our school in a big competition. It's against 2,000 other schools in Nigeria." Amara's face beamed with pride. She placed her hands on Alex's shoulders and looked into his glowing eyes. "Oh, Alex, that's wonderful news. I'm so proud of you." Alex hugged her tightly. "It's all thanks to you, Nanny. You always listen to me and encourage me. You make me want to do better." Amara felt tears welling in her eyes as she hugged him back. "You did all the hard work, Alex. You should be proud of yourself." As they celebrated, Amara's emotions were bittersweet. Pride for Alex swelled in her heart, but sadness lingered. I wish I could share this moment with him as his mother, not just his nanny. The school competition approached quickly. Alex poured his heart into preparing, staying up late to study and practice. The night before the event, he stood in front of Amara rehearsing his presentation. She smiled, offering words of encouragement and reminding him of his abilities. On the day of the competition, Alex felt a mix of excitement and nerves as he stood on the stage. "You can do this, Alex," he whispered to himself, taking a deep breath. Then, with confidence, he began his presentation. His hard work paid off. Alex's performance was outstanding, captivating both the judges and the audience. When the results were announced, the entire auditorium erupted in cheers. "And the winner is Alex from St. Mary's School," the announcer's voice boomed. Alex's classmates rushed to him, patting his back and shouting words of praise. "You did it, Alex," his best friend Tom exclaimed. "You were amazing up there." Among the audience were government officials, including the state governor, impressed by Alex's brilliance and composure. The governor made an unexpected announcement. "This young man represents the best of our state," the governor said. "I am proud to award Alex a prize of 20 million naira for his outstanding performance." The crowd gasped in astonishment, and Alex stood in stunned silence. He could hardly believe what he was hearing. Later that day, the school principal called Alex to his office and handed him a letter. "Alex, make sure you give this to your parents," he said, his face glowing with pride. "You're a brilliant young man, and the governor has confirmed the cash prize will be sent to them next week." Alex nodded, his hands trembling as he held the letter. "Thank you, sir," he managed, still in shock. When Alex got home, he found his mother Sarah sitting on the couch scrolling through her phone. He approached her, his heart racing with excitement. "Good afternoon, Mom," Alex greeted, trying to keep his voice steady. Sarah glanced up briefly. "Oh, my baby boy, how are you? How was school? I hope you didn't get into trouble," she asked, distractedly, before returning to her phone. Before Alex could reply, Amara entered the room. "What's the good news, Alex?" she asked, her voice filled with curiosity. Alex turned to her, relief washing over him. "My teacher gave me a prize for my parents," he explained. "She said I won it for performing well at the school competition." Amara's eyes lit up. "That's wonderful, Alex. I trust you. Now, tell me exactly what this prize is?" And Alex hesitated, but before finally revealing the truth. "My teacher told me I won a prize of 20 million naira, sponsored by the governor." Amara's jaw dropped. 20 million naira? She whispered, her voice trembling. She almost fainted from the shock. "That's incredible, Alex. You deserve it," she said hastily before retreating to her room. Sitting alone in her small quarters, Amara's mind raced. Alex won a prize of 20 million naira. My son won it. And this billionaire family will take it all? That's impossible. She paced the room, her thoughts consumed by the idea of revealing the truth. This is the time to fight. This is the time to get what's mine. Uh, Amara's resolve grew. It's going to be hard, she whispered, but with this prize money, our lives could change forever. We could start over, just Alex and me. Taking a deep breath, Amara left her room and walked to Alex's door. Her hands shook as she knocked softly. "Come in," Alex called. Amara entered, her heart pounding. Alex was at his desk, focused on his homework. "Nanny, is something wrong? You look scared," he asked, concern filling his voice. Amara stood frozen, her rehearsed words caught in her throat. She finally managed to whisper, "Alex, there's something I need to tell you." Alex put down his pen and turned to face her fully. "What is it, Nanny? You can tell me anything." Taking a deep breath, Amara knew this moment would change their lives forever. Amara paced back and forth in her small room, her thoughts racing. With that prize money, her lives could change forever, she muttered to herself. We could have a fresh start, just Alex and me. She stopped in her tracks, her resolve hardening, her hands clenched into fists as she spoke aloud, her voice steady and determined. "Whatever happens, I shall get Alex back as my son. I'm his real mother. I carried him for 9 months. No one can take that away from me." Taking a deep breath, she steeled herself for what she had to do. This moment had been building for years, and now it was time to reveal the truth. Amara walked to Alex's door, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and anticipation. Her hands trembled as she knocked softly. "Come in," Alex's voice called out from the other side. Amara stepped inside, her heart hammering in her chest. Alex was seated at his desk, diligently working on his homework. He looked up and immediately noticed her distress. "Nanny, is something wrong? Why do you look so scared?" he asked, concern lacing his voice. Amara stood frozen in the doorway. The words she had rehearsed countless times suddenly escaped her. The more she tried to speak, the more her fear tightened its grip around her throat. But she couldn't hold it in any longer. "Alex," she finally said, her voice trembling, "please, there's something I need to tell you." Alex put down his pen, turning to face her fully. Worry etched across his young face, but his voice was calm and filled with trust. "What is it, Nanny? You can tell me anything." Amara took another deep breath, knowing this moment would change their lives forever. The truth she had kept buried for so long was about to surface. There would be no going back.